Hey everyone, welcome to Gaming Injustice. Today's subject, the Metroid Prime series. I'll mainly be focusing on the Trilogy collection, which is available on the Wii and Wii U, while showing the changes made in each entry and making some comparisons to the first Metroid Prime on the GameCube. My last review was a series of 6 videos about 2 games that wound up being about 4 hours long. Here, I'm going to look at 2 editions of 3 games in an hour or so. Yeah, figure that one out. And I know what you're thinking, but Nick, your shtick is standing up for games that other people don't appreciate or know about. What makes you think Metroid Prime needs your help? Metroid Prime is like super popular. Everyone loves it. Look at all these other reviews. Yeah, there's a little more to it than you might think. There are circles of people who hate these games for pretty silly reasons, and if anything, would have you believe that the Prime games came closest to killing Metroid, like the essence of the Metroid series. And Other M, with its old school visuals and reused enemies, saved the series, bringing it back to what it's supposed to be, laser Cheerios and all, even though it didn't do much to help the series financially. So believe me, this game does warrant some defending. First, I want to take a minute to talk about canonicity. Now, I'm not here to start some big flame war in the comments over what's canon and what isn't. I know some people can't get into Metroid as a series because they find the games dreadful and boring and lifeless and don't latch onto Samus the way people like me do, with Other M being the only game they actually enjoyed and the only time they cared about Samus. I do not understand these people. But if you are one of those people, maybe I can help you understand weirdos like me who somehow do enjoy apparently soulless and terrible games. The whole canon thing is just confusing anyway. For the uninitiated, when something is canon, that just means it happened, and if something conflicts with an established canon so much that it creates a plot hole, or if it gets retconned and removed from the timeline by something else, that makes it non-canon. It doesn't always go that way though, sometimes with one canon being the real one, and the others being variants. Transformers has been remade so many times that it has several fleshed out canons, but the Japanese canon of the series like G1 is a little different than it is in America thanks to series like the Headmasters. The Star Wars Expanded Universe was canon, now only some parts of it are, the rest of it basically relegated to fanfiction status. Most of the elements that were carried over to the new canon are things that occurred before the original trilogy, that won't get in the way of whatever Disney wants to do with the new movies. But even then, we're seeing characters like Thrawn return in new roles that'll fit the new timeline. Not to mention tons of stuff from the Old Republic era, and even a few set pieces that seem to harken back to the Dawn of the Jedi series creeping in. Darth Revan almost appeared in a cancelled episode of the Clone Wars a few years back, with a model made for him and everything. Until the day some Disney executive and his goons bust my door open and order me to stop playing Knights of the Old Republic, it shouldn't matter what people say is canon or not. Up until Other M was released, the Prime games were considered part of the Metroid canon, all taking place between the original Metroid and Metroid 2 Return of Samus. However, once Other M was released, all that suddenly became a lot more nebulous. Japanese developers apparently don't like Retro's vision of the Metroid universe. They thought it was too Western or sullen, and just didn't like that this is the version of Metroid that exploded and became so popular for a few years. Some say it's just a translation error in a cutscene or a slip-up from some crappy old interview that even made things this way. But Other M's story makes it almost impossible for the Prime games to take place in the same timeline. Samus' flashback scenes don't really leave any room for it. I'm pretty sure this was done by accident though, and the writers, chiefly Sakamoto, didn't maliciously set out to erase the Prime games. It just sorta happened. This is one of many things that makes the recently released AM2R so fascinating to me. If you want to play all the Metroid games in chronological order, and you start with Zero Mission, then play the Prime games, then jump into Metroid 2 Return of Samus, the next game on the timeline, the change is pretty jarring to say the least. In fact, the whole feel of Metroid 2 just doesn't feel that compatible with the Prime games. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, that jumping into Metroid 2 after finishing Prime 3 feels like something just doesn't match up, you know? This is one of the things that's so great about AM2R, is how it tries to squeeze the Prime games back into the timeline. There are so many touches in this game, from the music to the sound effects. The the architecture to the log entries, to even the presence of a Galactic Federation ship that looks like the one seen in Prime 2, and bodies of Federation soldiers wearing both the blocky white armor from the Prime games and the blue armor see another M, like the new outfits have only just started being made around this time, and even just the fact that walls and objects that can be destroyed by super missiles are made of a substance called cordite, just like in the Prime games. All of this stuff makes it so easy to jump into this game right after you finish the Prime series, to go into this next chapter of the story and think, yeah, this works. It also has a lot of similar homages and references to Fusion, including the natural original forms of creatures like Ceres and Genesis, which were copied by the X-Parasites in that game, but we never saw what they originally looked like, aside from Ceres' skeleton. It's so respectfully done, and yet it somehow almost makes Other M feel like the one that doesn't belong, without even trying to, just by making these games look so much more authentic. Now, this whole is it canon, is it not sort of thing really shouldn't be an issue. People should be able to enjoy whichever canon they want, and that's where the conversation should end. Unfortunately, a lot of fans of any given series with some elements of questionable canonicity do adopt the attitude that if something isn't explicitly canon, well then it isn't important, and you should stop talking about it like it's anything worth a damn because it isn't. Just forget it ever happened because it did, and you should feel bad for bringing it up at all. So shut up, stupid! I'm sure some of you have run into people like this, these obnoxious phoebes who strongly believe that it is not okay to enjoy something that isn't stated to be 100% canon, anything that doesn't fall perfectly in line with the original creator's vision, even if it ends up being superior to that vision. They will not let you have that in any capacity. They will not allow you to pollute their precious canon. They will fight for the purity of the one true vision until the precious senpai tells them to back off. And the Prime series is one of the biggest victims of this harmful mentality that I've seen. You could bring up all sorts of great points, explain to people in detail why you enjoy the Prime games, and no matter what you say, they'll shoot it down and dismiss you by saying, it's not canon, so who cares what you think? Why can't you just stop being an asshole and let these games die for the integrity of the Metroid series? This surprisingly widespread practice of demeaning people for clinging to the wrong canon is despicable to me. In terms of world building and atmosphere, the Metroid Prime games add so much more worthwhile material to the Metroid lore, and even Samus as a character in some ways, than Other M ever does, and I'll go into detail about that as we jump into these games. I just want to be clear that I don't hate Other M, I'm just solely disappointed that this is Sakamoto's vision for how the Metroid series should be, and that so many fans have fallen for its nostalgic visuals, this lovingly crafted illusion of it being more faithful to the old school Metroid games than the Prime games, because it has laser Cheerios. So if the last 5 minutes haven't bored you enough to make you close this tab, let's jump into Metroid Prime.